Now in the last section we have discussed about the ARM processors, its features and its basic architecture of CPU. In this section I will be explaining about the pipelining mechanism and the bus architecture, that is ARMPA bus architecture, AMBA, which I will be explaining later, and the protocols relating to the ARM processor. Now the pipelining mechanism of ARM9 processors. What we mean by pipelining, that is how we have to give the data, how we have to present the data to the processors. So there can be various stages of the pipelining process. It can be either 3 or 5. Now here we are having 5-stage pipeline design. So the 5 stages are given here as FDEMW, that is instruction fetch, instruction decode, execute, data memory access and register write. So we can see in the figure clearly there are 5 stages. So here we are having these 5 stages, and in every cycle the stages are going to occur. So in the first cycle you can see that it is fetching, decoding, this read operation is going on, then executing in ALU, and then data memory access, and finally the write operation, register writing operation. It is occurring say in one cycle, and again in next cycles the operation is getting shifted. Okay, so it is a 5-stage pipeline operation. So remember these 5 stages. That is, first one is a fetching stage. The next one it is decoding it and register reading stage. Then executing using the arithmetical and logical unit, or calculating the address or multiply operation stage. So this operations is taking place in the third step. Then it has to access the memory and finally write the result back to the register. So, if we are overlapping these stages of execution, ARM9 DTMI, it maximizes the clock rate achievable to execute each instruction. So, we can have a high throughput approaching one instruction per cycle. Okay, so we have already seen in the case when we discussed about the architecture that in the case of the ARM9 processors, it is having high speed because of its execution. So remember these 5 stages, and always get into mind that ARM9 DTMI, it has got a high throughput, and because of this 5-stage pipeline, and by means of overlapping these stages, we are capable of providing high speed. We are getting a high clock rate achievable for the ARM processors. Now, next section, before going directly into the ARM CPU bus organization and its protocols, let us first discuss about the basics of CPU bus and what you mean by protocol. Now, the microprocessor, it is an important element of embedded computing system, but it is not capable of doing its job without the memories and the input-output devices. And also we know what's the importance of bus, or what you mean by bus. Without a bus, the different systems, it cannot intercommunicate with each other. So bus, we can say that it is a collection of wires. It is an important hardware component. It is a mechanism by which the CPU communicates with its memory and other devices. And there can be different types of buses like the data bus, address bus, control bus and system bus. Now, coming to the protocol, we should understand that in the bus there is some protocol, or there are some rules which is going to govern this, how the communication is going to occur. So, it is defining a protocol by which our central processing unit, memory and the input-output device has to communicate with each other. So, in addition to just sending your data, we will be having some extra dedicated wire called as a handshake signals. So these are needed for controlling the communications, and other wires in the bus, which is called as a data bus, which is used for data transmission. So actually we require two types of communication to take place. One is the actual data transmission, and other one for the transfer of these handshake signals. That is, the two devices, they have to agree that a communication is going to take place. After this handshake signal occurs only, then the data transmission will take place. So generally the names of two required handshake output signals for communication are, first one is enquiry signal. That is, in the figure the device 1 is enquiring to device 2 whether it is ready for data transmission. It is to inquire because the device 2, it may be performing a different task or it may be subjected to some interrupt routine. So it is a duty of the device 1 first of all to initiate this handshake signal and ask the device to whether it is capable of data transmission at that particular instance. So that is an inquiry signal. So the device 2 now has to go back an acknowledgement signal. That is the second one, acknowledgement, ACK signal back to the device 1. So only after this inquiry and this acknowledgement signal occurs, the data transmission between the two devices is going to take place. Now, in the last slide, we have seen about the two types of handshaking signals, that is inquiry and acknowledgement signal. Now, we can say that the actual data transfer takes place in 4 cycles. So, this handshake, it's called as 4-cycle handshake. The behavioral timing diagram of the two devices is shown. So, what is the first step? The device 1, it is going to send its handshake signal, that is an inquiry output signal. So it is inquiring whether device 2, it is ready for a data reception. Okay, so this is the first step. So in the first cycle, you can see the device 1, it is initiating a communication, it is sending a handshake inquiry output signal. So after a time delay, what will happen at the device cycle 2? The device 2, it is ready to receive. So it is going now to send back its acknowledgement output signal. What does it indicate? That it is ready for the data reception so that the device 1 can start transmitting its data. Okay, so between this time lag, it shows that the two signals are occurring. That is, first in cycle 1, the device 1, from here it is initiating the inquiry output signal, and after a particular time period, now the device 2 is also sending back its acknowledgement signal. Now what is a cycle 3? Here is a point we are having data transmission, and once it is complete, the device 2 has to lower its acknowledgement signal, thereby signaling that it has successfully received the data. So once this occurs, the data transmission is going to take place, and afterwards what will happen? See, at cycle 3, at this particular point, it is lowering its ACK signal. Okay, so the data has completely been transferred. Now it is sending back a signal, that is, again it will send back a signal, basically acknowledgement signal, indicating that successfully it has received the data. So what will be the cycle 4 now? The device 1, again it has to lower its inquiry signal. So with the help of these two signals only, this 4 cycle is taking place, two important handshake signals. So at again this particular, that is a 4th cycle, the device 1 lowers its inquiry signal. Okay, so this is basically the behavioral time diagram of the two devices, wherein by which, with the help of inquiry and acknowledgement signal, a handshake and a data transmission has occurred. Now we have seen about the 4-cycle handshake using the two handshaking signals. Now once this is complete, that is after the 4 cycles, both the handshaking signals, they will be of low state. At the end, both the handshaking signals are of low state, and the system return back to its original state, and again it is capable of another communication. It can initiate another handshake enabled transfer. So again a handshake mechanism, again this 4th cycle will continue, data transfer will take place, then next handshake, and so on. Now this is basically a CPU bus system. That is, we know that we have got two important handshake signals. Now between the CPU, our central processing unit, and between our memory and input output devices, there needs to be some synchronization provided. For that we require a clock signal. So the clock signal, that is all these are basically what? The signals on the bus, or we can call all these as a components of bus. So what will be the clock signal? It is used for providing the synchronization to the bus components. Then read and write signal. Now remember that read is going to be a true, that is a high operation, and write it is going to be a false, or it is going to be indicated by a low. So the read and write signal. Next one, address. What will be the address? It will be bundle of signal bits which carries the address required for data transfer, and also data, it will be again another bundle of signal bits that will be ready to carry the data, that is to and fro from the CPU. That is, you can see this data signal, it is bidirectional, whereas others are unidirectional. Data ready. What we mean by data ready, it indicates that signal is going to indicate that there is a valid data signal on the data bus. Okay, valid data signal on the data bus. So remember that only the CPU, it will be able of initiating the whichever operation, say read or write operation, that is from an input output device or to a memory. Only this line, this data line, it is going to be bidirectional. But the other line, as you can see, that is regarding the read and write operation or the address, all these are going to be unidirectional. Okay, so the CPU alone can read and write, but the memory and the input output devices, they cannot initiate the data transfer because it is unidirectional signal. So remember here that a memory location or an input output device, it will be identified by its address, and the CPU, it can fully control all the signal transferred related to the fundamental bus operations of the reading and writing data. Now we can have a multiplexing of address and data bus. That is, we will be having a same bus lines for both the address and the data as shown in the figure. Now you can see here in the figure there is a CPU and you are having same line for the both the data as well as the address. But here one thing you have to note that there may be additional extra control lines. That is what is written here to tell whether the signal value on the bus line, it is going to be an address or a data. So if it is address, we will be having address enabled, and if it is data, we will be having this data enabled. So extra control lines should be present. But whatever it is, we will be having here a single bus line for both the address as well as the data. So typically we know that the address has to come first on the combined address data line, followed by the data which is to be transferred. So with the help of this multiplexer circuits, we can have a single bus line for both the address as well as the data. Now, the system bus configuration of the CPU. Now, sometimes we may require a multiple bus system. What do you mean by this multiple bus system is that the high-speed devices, you can interconnect it to a high-performance bus, whereas the low-speed devices, it will be connected to a different bus. And then we will be having a bridge, that is a small block of hardware logic circuit which is interconnecting these two. Okay, so bridges, switches, hubs, etc. They are those interconnecting hardware in data communication. So here with the help of this bridge, we are going to have the interconnection of these different buses. So for high speed, you are using a high speed bus, and for low speed device, you are using a low speed bus. Obviously, this is a little complex in the sense that we require more expensive connectors and circuits. But with the help of such a high-speed bus, it can provide higher or wider data connections. That is, your larger data can be transferred. Okay, so this is a system bus configuration of CPU. Now we have seen about the basic CPU bus and its protocol. Now let us come into the ARM bus. So let us see that what is the AMBA bus. So AMBA stands for Advanced Microcontroller Bus Architecture. So what is it? It is going to define an on-chip communication standard for designing high-performance embedded microcontrollers. So when we are going to see about the figure of this AMBA bus, you can see that there will be three distinct buses, which is going to be defined within this AMBA specification. It will be a AHB, that is Advanced High Performance Bus. It can be ASB, Advanced System Bus, or APB, that is Advanced Peripheral Bus. So we have told about this three type of distinct buses. So the advanced high performance bus or advanced system bus, and here we have the advanced peripheral bus. Now basically what you understand from this figure, you can clearly see a bridge here which is going to interconnect the demarcation which is shown here. Now what is the demarcation here? Here we can see the advanced peripheral bus, that is APB. It is interconnecting, the bus is interconnecting to several input-output terminal devices. Say the peripheral devices, keypad, UART, that is all the transmitting receiving peripherals, programmed input output timers, etc. So all these are low performance devices. Okay, but there we are connecting, for example, we are interconnecting our main ARM processors, or we are interconnecting our on-chip RAM memory, or our DMA. Directly we are connecting to our memory access, or where we require high bandwidth. So all these are interconnection of very important devices. So we require a high performance bus. So we are having a AHB or ASB here, and the bridge is going to interconnect both of them. So we can say that the total bus architecture, it is now being divided with the help of a bridge section, and AHB or ASB interconnects to most important parts of the processor, most important parts of the system, whereas this APB section is interconnecting with the peripherals. Now, the bus organization figure we have already seen, that is ARM processor. It has created a separate bus specification for a single chip system. It was supporting CPU, memory, peripherals, all integrated in a system on silicon. Now, as shown in the figure, that is, we have seen the figure that there was two buses. We could have the AHB, that is high performance bus, or the system bus, which was directly connecting to our CPU and supporting several high performance features. That is, it is being interconnected to our main memory or DMA or main processor, etc. So it could have advanced features. For example, it can support pipelining mechanism, burst transfer, that is where we require sequential transfer or high-speed data transfers, split transactions to occur, that is simultaneously, say we have to get the acknowledgement inquiry signal for high-speed data transactions, multiple bus masters. So all this is supported by the AMBA high performance bus, and then we can have a bridge which is interconnecting this AHB and APB. And the bus is designed to be simple and easy to implement. It also consumes very relatively less power, and the AHB assume that all the peripherals, they are acting as a slave devices, which is going to simplify the logic required in both the peripherals and bus controller. And this next section, that is when we are saying about the APB section, it does not require to perform complex operation, for example like the pipelining operation. So it is going to simplify the bus logic, so that requires lower power also. So we have what, two types, that is high speed and the low speed buses, and this is going to be interconnected with the help of a bridge. So bridge is an interconnecting factor in this case. So in this particular section, we have discussed mainly about the pipelining mechanism as well as the bus organization, that is AMPA bus organization.